So I've got sports reporter Frankie Elliot with me here, and we're going to be speaking a bit more about the latest, about the coming-ins and going-outs with Brighton and Hove Albion. So obviously, Frankie, the thing people want to know is who's going to be coming in to replace Caicedo.
Yes, so it's been a week since Moises Caicedo left the club, and they've got a list of apparent replacements that they want to bring in before the transfer window closes on September 1st. It seems that one of those players is almost definitely going to be signed by the club at the end of this week. Carlos Belba, the Lille 19-year-old midfielder, they have had a bid reportedly accepted of £25 million or north of £25 million. So he's going to be flying over to the UK this week to complete a medical. Personal terms don't seem to be an issue for the player. So he looks like he could be the first one through the door. Very young player, 19 years old, as I said. Has only played one full season in professional football. He made his debut for Lille last year and impressed in a side that did very well in Liga 1 last year. So he looks like he could be through the door. And there might be even one more coming in as well. Fabricio Diaz, a 20-year-old Uruguayan from a team called Liverpool in his home country. He is another player that they hope to sign for a little less. A little fewer sum of money of £8.5 million. He is a player that has captained the Uruguayan under 20 side to a World Cup win last year in Argentina. He's got a lot of people in South America are very, very confident he will go on to be a great player. Again, another player that's coming in that's not quite the finished article. So two very, very young players coming in, we expect before September 1st. So not a Moises Caicedo replacement that's ready to come in straight away and challenge the first team, but two very exciting players for the future, that's for sure.
And what can Brighton fans expect from those two signings?
Well, they can expect them to be players that don't go into the first team straight away, as I said. We've seen that a lot with Brighton, that players come in and then maybe a year down the line, once they've had a bit more experience playing either in England or just playing more professional football in general, whether that be with the club or on a loan move elsewhere. So it will be a slow burner, I expect, with both players. But both are expected to do the same sort of role that Caicedo did last year, which we saw, which was be a bit more defensive-minded, breaking up attacks, looking to read the game and read the play to make interceptions and start counter-attacks for Brighton. They're both very, very athletic, both very quick and agile. So we can again see that athleticism that we saw from Caicedo last year. So they are basically coming in to fill the void that Caicedo left. I don't think they'll be doing it straight away because obviously De Zerbi will want players that are ready to play at the highest level, and I don't think they're quite there. But somewhere down the line, I think they'll be key members of the Brighton first team squad.
And there's obviously a couple of players as well who look like they might be leaving Brighton on loan this transfer window. Yes,
so before Brighton's previous game against Wolves, De Zerbi said that 3 players were likely to leave the club before the end of the window. And already those players have seemed to move on quite quickly since then. So the first one is Facundo Buonate, the Argentinian sort of attacking midfielder. He was signed just in January for £9.5 million. A lot of expected of him, a lot of talk in Argentina of him being one for the future for the national team. He had quite a strong 6 months with the club, to be fair, considering he's not played in England before. He scored 2 goals. He scored 1 goal and got 2 assists in about 15 appearances, which is impressive for a teenager. And he wants to get more football, it's believed, this season, and De Zerbi can't offer him that with a very, very competitive squad that he has. So Buonate is joining Leeds United in the Championship on loan, as is his fellow sort of teenage compatriot Yassim Ayari, another player who was signed in January, this time from Sweden, AIK. He was featured less in the first team last year, made only about 4 or 5 appearances, all from the bench. Again, a very talented technical player, but not quite up to speed with the English game at the moment. So he's spending a season out on loan at Coventry City, again in the Championship, to play, as De Zerbi says, up to sort of 40, 50 games this season, which he thinks he needs to improve as a player. The final one who will be leaving is Stephen Alzate. A lot of Brighton fans will know Alzate as the man who scored the goal at Anfield that got them that famous victory against Liverpool back in 2020 during the COVID season. He went out on loan last season because he found first team opportunities quite difficult. He actually impressed for the team he was playing for, Standard Liège in Belgium. He was a regular player for them in the central midfield. He came back into the first team squad for their pre-season tour of America, and many in the club and outside of the of the club as well, also felt that he would be a key member of the first team squad this year, because of course Brighton are competing in full competition, so they'll need that rotation. But De Zerbi feels that he can find better players elsewhere, or maybe doesn't trust Alzate yet, so is likely to send him out on loan, and possibly may even be sold if the right bid comes in of around £10 million. The two clubs that are most interested in Alzate are Sevilla and Fiorentina. We're not sure whether they are for permanent deals or for loan moves, but we can expect to see Alzate move before September 1st.
And I wanted to ask as well, so with Alzate, obviously they signed him when Roberto De Zerbi wasn't around, and Brighton were on a very different trajectory, and they've shot up since then. Do you think Steven Alzate is still good enough to perform and start with this Brighton squad?
I think there's going to be some question marks now. I think coming back from pre-season, the club said that he had joined back up with the first team. I think they felt that he had an opportunity to really cement himself as being a part of this club that is now challenging at the higher end of the table. As you said, when Alzate was at the club, they were very much fighting off relegation. It seems to me, whether it be through the sporadic appearances he had in the friendlies in America or during training sessions, De Zerbi is not really taking a fancy to the young midfielder. And so the fact that after not even playing him in any of the Premier League games so far, I think he might have come on for the last 15 or 20 minutes against Luton. He clearly doesn't see enough in him, and obviously De Zerbi's word is the most important word at the club. So if he doesn't see him as being good enough yet, I think if this loan move doesn't work out for him, or maybe a permanent deal comes in, it's a clear sign that they don't see Alzate as having a future of this club that's now trying to achieve at the higher end of the table and go far in cup competition. So it's just a reflection on how far Brighton have come since signing players like Alzate, but it would be disappointing for him, of course.
And on that note, do you see Buonanotte and Ayari breaking into the first team in the next couple of seasons? Yeah,
I think it's a bit different in their situation, because, like I say, both of them have come over with very, very little experience of adult football, to be honest, let alone professional football. You can see the talents there in the games they have played. You can clearly see they've got the technical ability to play at the highest level, but just maybe lack the sort of physicality and the gamesmanship almost of English football to really sort of compete with the Brighton first team squad at the moment, because that's obviously what they're looking for, as I say, they're competing at the higher end of the Premier League table.
Thank you, Frankie. And that's everything from part one of latest TV news. Make sure you tune in later, as we'll be discussing Brighton's win against Wolverhampton Wanderers, as well as their upcoming home match against West Ham United. Welcome back to part two of latest TV news. I've got sports reporter Frankie Elliot with me here, and we're going to be speaking about Brighton's emphatic win over Wolves, as well as their upcoming match against West Ham United. So, Frankie, what did you make of Brighton's win over Wolves?
It was scintillating. This is a team that's banging form at the moment. They're picking up from where they left off at the end of last season. Obviously, the 4-1 win at Luton was great, but many people would have put that down to the fact they were playing a team that doesn't have much proven Premier League quality. Against Wolves, again, a team that many would see as struggling this season, but put in a very good performance against Manchester United at Old Trafford in their first game, and have a lot more sort of Premier League proven players and European quality players in their squad. But yet again, Brighton managed to score 4 goals and comfortably beat them. So it's really impressive start to the season, that not only that they're winning both of their games, but winning them comfortably and scoring 8 goals in the process.
And what were the key strengths you noticed in Brighton's win on the weekend?
Their counter-attacking, especially in the second half, was phenomenal. I think last season a lot of their quality and the reason they won games was down to the midfield duo of Caicedo and McAllister, helping them to keep the ball for long periods of games and dominate possession. This season, it seems, obviously they've lost both of those players. They're relying on the fact they've got so much attacking quality in their arsenal. Obviously, João Pedro, the £30 million signing, he didn't even start on the weekend, but we had Julio Enciso, the young Paraguayan. He was electric, playing behind Danny Welbeck, who links up the play brilliantly in attack. And then Solly March and Karim Matoma, 2 wingers that we knew last season were brilliant and clinical. They seem to have continued that this season as well. Matoma scored one of the best goals we'll see this season, adding end product to his brilliant dribbling ability. And then Solly March as well continues on his rich goal scoring run of form with 2 excellently taken goals. As I said, both off the back of Wolves trying to score about 10-15 seconds earlier, a quick counter-attacking, and Brighton scored twice within a couple of minutes. So that counter-attacking quality and the speed, and like I say, and the the tenaciousness of their attacks and the clinicalness of their attacks is really something to behold, and it's very, very exciting as well.
And who do you think Brighton's standout player was in that fixture?
There was a couple, but the main one for me was Julio Enciso. De Zerbi called him the best player, or the man of the match, so to speak, in his post-match press conference. But he was very, very impressive for me, and I think again it highlights how much strength and depth Brighton have this season going forward. We've always said, pre-Roberto De Zerbi, how Brighton's really struggled to score goals. I think having players like Enciso, who is not afraid to have a shot, is very quick, is very dynamic in his dribbling, but also has great end product with his passing and crossing. To have someone like that who didn't even start the first game of the season, when you've got people like João Pedro and even Evan Ferguson as well, the Irish striker who is talked about as being one of the best up-and-coming strikers in European football, to have those players waiting in the wings alongside your team scoring 8 goals in 2 games, as I said, is very, very exciting for all Brighton fans.
And on the other hand, do you think there's anything Brighton could improve upon ahead of their game against West Ham United?
Well, the one thing I think they would be disappointed by was obviously the fact they haven't kept a clean sheet yet, especially in those 2 games where they dominated so much. As the Wolves, they were 4-0 up and cruising. I think at that point, there's about 25-30 minutes left in the game. You're looking, right, can we keep that clean sheet? Can we, that's our motivation to make sure this performance is an excellent one from start to finish. And they didn't really do that. They let Wolves back into the game. They had a number of opportunities in the last 20 minutes and obviously grabbed a goal as well. So that would be the one thing that would disappoint them. But we know with De Zerbi, he's not that concerned about defensive stability and clean sheets. He wants to just score more goals than the opposition, and they've done that quite comfortably in those 2 games. But from looking at the game as a perfectionist, I think they would consider that they're looking to win games but also not concede concede any, to be honest.
And in terms of players starting for Brighton, would you make any changes ahead of the West Ham game?
Well, we've noticed already, De Zerbi said before the Wolves game that he's already considering making more changes than he did last year. Mm-hmm. It felt very much last season that he had a set 11 players that he wanted to use and trusted. He's trying to expand on that this season. Obviously, they've signed 5 players, could be 6 or 7 by the end of the window. So he's bolstered his squad. There's more depth in it, and now he can chop and change as obviously they start to play 3 games a week from September. So we may see João Pedro back into the side for Julio Enciso. We may see Evan Ferguson start his first game of the season, because we know Danny Welbeck is not quite up physically to playing regular football every week. So I could expect those 2 to maybe come in the midfield. Obviously, Gilmour started this week ahead of Mo Dahoud, had a brilliant game. Maybe we could see Dahoud back into the side as well. Maybe for Pascal Gross dropping out, we should wait and see. And I also expect to see a change at right back as well, simply for the fact that James Milner again has been excellent these first 2 games, but is 37, and they want to rest his legs. So maybe Joel Veltman returning back into the side, or possibly even Tariq Lamptey, as he's been seen back in training after 4 months out with a knee injury. So 3 or 4 changes maybe, but at the same time, they've been so brilliant in the first 2 games. And none of those players deserve to be dropped from the side. So we can also expect to see maybe just 1 or 2, or maybe no changes at all. But it's like I said, Brighton are in a really, really healthy position right now, because they can make those changes because there's so much depth and quality in their squad.
And looking ahead to West Ham, how do you see that match playing out?
Well, again, it feels that each week they're playing a team that brings them a different challenge and a bit more quality to them. Obviously, West Ham have won a game this season, unlike the Wolves team that are still struggling to score goals or find a win. West Ham have come off the back of a brilliant victory at home to Chelsea after. A lot of people were worried maybe after the sale of Declan Rice earlier this summer. They seem to have recruited quite well. I think James Ward-Prowse is an excellent addition to the side, as is the Ajax midfielder Alvarez. I think he'll be a great addition. So they've made some good signings, and they still obviously have a lot of those players that helped them win the Europa Conference League last season. So it helps Brighton again that it's at the Amex. I think obviously playing at the London Stadium would make it a bit more of a difficult game for them. But you would feel that West Ham have got more quality and have got more confidence going into this game than, say, Wolves or Luton may have had. So it would be a bit more of a challenge, but again, the way Brighton are playing, you would still see them as favourites.
And we noticed one thing with West Ham on the weekend in that win against Chelsea is that their fullbacks were getting penetrated quite a lot by those wingers, and you're thinking if you put in Solly Marsh and Matoma there against Soufal and Emerson, it could be quite scary, and it looks like Brighton could really attack quite well down the flanks. Absolutely. I think the one thing that West Ham their biggest weakness is probably their defending.
As you said, although Chelsea lost 3-1, they actually created a fair few opportunities, especially in the first half, when obviously Enzo Fernandez scores that penalty before the break. It changes the whole complexion of the game. So obviously, I'm sure De Zerbi will look at that and see that as a key weakness to exploit down the wide areas with two of his most penetrative players in Matoma and March, who are in such great form at the moment. So that's how they look to win the game. But on the flip side, West Ham's set piece delivery is excellent now, and their heading ability in the box with their centre backs, and obviously people like Antonio and Souček as well. They have a real threat. Going in from free kicks and corners, and obviously James Ward-Prowse, their new signing, is one of the best dead ball specialists in the Premier League. So that will be that West Ham will be trying to see to win the game as well. So both sides will see the opponent's weaknesses as their strengths in some respects, and both sides will feel they're confident of winning the game. So it should be a really, really good game at the Amex Stadium on Saturday.
And I think this is the 6th Premier League season both teams have been in the same league. And I don't think West Ham have won against Brighton yet. Mentally, how do you think that's going to benefit Brighton on Saturday?
Oh, it definitely will benefit. A number of those players, especially at Brighton, have been there throughout that whole period. Obviously, Solly March and Lewis Dunk will have pretty much played all of those games. So that will feed into the psychological battle before the game. But also at the same time, a lot of those games have been draws. I mean, last year they won both games, Brighton, don't get me wrong, but if you look throughout the whole 6 years that Brighton were in the Premier League, a lot of those games against West Ham have mainly been draws. So West Ham won't want to read too much into it. They'll be buzzing off what was a fantastic performance at the London Stadium against Chelsea on Sunday, and look to kick on and try and get another 3 points this weekend. So I obviously, for Brighton's sake and for the fans' sake, that's something that they will give them confidence. But they'll be wary of what this West Ham side can do if they don't turn up and play as well as they have done.
And if I've got to twist your arm here, what scoreline would you put on Saturday's game?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, this one. I think I'm just going to go for a Brighton win, just because, like I said, they're playing so well. I'm going to go for a 2-1 Brighton win. I feel it would be 1-1 into the last 15, 20 minutes, and I can see someone like Matoma or even March again grabbing the winner.
Brilliant, thank you. That's everything from us here at Latest TV News. Thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to read more stories from across the county, please make sure to visit Sussex World online.